This is Thursday, April 2nd, recording here from the chapel at the Diocese of Central Florida. This is an update and a piece of communication that will be followed up by a written email to the leadership of the Diocese of Central Florida. The first thing I'd like to say is I want to commend the clergy and leadership of the diocese for the incredibly pastorally sensitive and creative ways that congregations are connecting with each other. I love the imaginative approaches to worship, the commitments that are being made to create telephone trees to stay in touch with people. Even in some of our largest congregations, somebody is making a phone call to somebody else just to make sure that people are okay. And I can only encourage that. I'm thrilled, in fact, that we are displaying that kind of interest, that kind of compassion, that kind of zeal to make sure that though we are not physically present, we are still staying deeply connected to one another. I know as a result of that, what that feels like, particularly for clergy, and I'm sure others, is a kind of weariness. I don't know about you, but as somebody who's spending half his life or more, it feels like online, the blend, or better yet, the lack of boundaries between work life and home life are only continuing to crash into each other. Everything from squirreling away to another room to answer another Zoom call, to in the midst of that Zoom call, our 3-year-old granddaughter running into the room to say hi to Poppy, and therefore anybody else who's on camera. It's just a part of normal life. I, quite frankly, think it is both a gift and a danger. It's a gift in the sense that it allows us to find ways to be connected to one another in a time when that kind of human touch is so desperately needed. People miss physical contact. They miss the opportunity to be able to just stand and talk to one another in the grocery store aisle or walking or other ways that they stay in touch. And therefore, to do the effort necessary to remain in touch and to be human in doing so is not only acceptable, it's in fact the right way to go. A polished presentation only can really communicate a lack of humanness that I think might not serve us well. So even if what you're doing video-wise or in other ways feels like less than the best, it's staying in touch that's more important than making sure all of the polish is in place. The danger of it is that the strain that we are all experiencing, the kind of grief, knowing that we have friends and others who are in places of real difficulty. I think many of us now know people who either directly are friends of friends or distant relatives in other parts of the country who have been infected by COVID-19. And that produces inside of us a kind of inner stress that just has become a part of daily life. So that, it seems, at least for me, requires me to be more attentive to my own spiritual life, not less. To make sure that I have the kinds of time for quiet, for prayer, and for reflection that allow me to be at my best when I'm doing what I can to be able to minister to other people. I was drawn this week to a letter that was in fact written by Evelyn Underhill, known spiritual author from England, to the Archbishop of Canterbury. This is called A Letter from Evelyn Underhill to Archbishop Lang of Canterbury, dated 1930. She's making, in fact, a plea to the Archbishop for the recovery of spiritual life for their clergy. I want to say, by contrast, the spiritual life of many of the clergy, at least that I know about, seems pretty healthy. But I want to underscore the need to make sure that the demand of our activity doesn't come at the sacrifice of our own spiritual intimacy with God. To do so, in fact, is a disservice to the people that we serve, as well as to us, because we're running on fumes. She says this: we look to the church to give us an experience of God, mystery, holiness, and prayer, which, though it may not solve the problems of the natural world, shall lift us to contact with the supernatural world and minister eternal life. We look to the clergy to help and direct our spiritual growth, but we are seldom satisfied because, with a few noble exceptions, they're so lacking in spiritual realism, so ignorant of the laws and experience of the life of prayer. Their Christianity is more humanitarian than it is theocentric, so their dealing with souls are often vague, amateurish. Those needing spiritual help may find lots of kindness, but seldom that firm touch that is first-hand knowledge of the interior way of life, which can only come from the fruit of a disciplined personal life of prayer, and there is no other way for that to be able to happen. The two things that the laity want from the priesthood are spiritual realism and a genuine love of souls. But on the other hand, what they often experience is a perfunctory service, every cold and slovenly celebration of communion, which is more frequent than some bishops realize, and becomes a lost opportunity, which in fact discredits corporate worship and reflects back poorly on the shallow quality of the priest's inner life. I know that's not true for many of us, but I know that I need to do the kind of interior check-in to make sure I'm available to give my best. And all I can do is offer a plea to make sure that my other colleagues are trying to do that as well. Secondly, what I want to do is just make a couple of comments, given all that I said about creativity around worship, in terms of some directives. My assumption is that you are obeying the directives of less than 10 when you're doing your videos, your live streams, or other ways of communication, and that the only people present are essential people. I would urge you to follow that directive, no matter how you are conducting worship or what means you're using to be able to communicate that to a broader audience. You will be receiving today from Canon Holcomb his letter from the canons, and he and I have been in conversation about that, where he will lay out in a more detailed form some practical ways to think about what that might look like, especially over Holy Week and Easter. The next thing I want to talk about is the CARES Act. Again, from Canon Holcomb, you will receive a very detailed instruction about how to take advantage of the money that is available. To use the phrase, don't leave the money on the table. Take advantage of what it is that is being given to us. Earl Pickett has worked very, very hard answering a lot of personal questions. He sent out his own emails and posts. Pay attention, get that done for the sake of your congregation's financial health and for your own ease of knowing that there is some cushion in the midst of what I know for many of us is a financial downturn. In fact, it's clear that we're probably going to hit two slumps, one right after the other. This time right now, in the midst of an absence from worship, which is usually a strong financial time for us, which is meant to carry us over our normal slump in the summer when so many people go away. Well, this could be two slumps, one literally right after the other. So to take the care to be able to plan for that in any way possible is really important. And finally, to that end, I'm assembling a team that is going to include canons, archdeacon, financial officer, members of the Finance Commission, and others to begin to think together about how best to serve the congregations and ministries of our diocese in this time of financial hardship. There are lots of ideas, from loan forgiveness to providing resources, thinking about ways that we can disperse money adequately, but the goal is to get the needed financial resources to those congregations and ministries that need it the most. And so I'm pooling, in essence, the brain trust of the diocese about how to do that best in a way that does not reward financial slovenliness, but that instead tries its best to minister to those congregations and ministries financially that need the money the most, that are really doing the best they can with what they have. My hope is that nobody goes under. That may happen. I hope it doesn't. But we want to do all that we can to be able to serve one another and think as a diocese, how can we best serve the ministries, constituents, and congregations with whom we are so deeply related? So honestly, I would ask for your wisdom and for your prayers. If you have ideas, I'd love to hear them. And I hope we'll be able to find a way to get through this in a way that really does allow us, in fact, to come out in a better spiritual place. The good news of this Holy Week is that it does get worse before it gets better. We're just at Palm Sunday. We're not at Maundy Thursday and Good Friday yet. But going through the very difficult, hard times that we are facing, we do so still with the promise of Easter and the knowledge that God has us in the palm of his hand and that we are trusting him to help us to serve him and the people that he has given us faithfully. May God give us the spiritual resources to be able to do that, and the love and support from one another that helps us know we're not in this alone, but that God has in fact surrounded us with very strong and faithful sisters and brothers. Thank you.